Good evening, and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting, November 21st, 2013. We have a varied agenda this evening. First item on the agenda is our tax classification hearing from our assessors, our Board of Assessors. And Karen, good evening. Charlie, good evening. Kate and Caroline. And who is going to speak this evening? Please, Karen, you have the floor then.
Okay, well, basically, it's up to the Board of Assessors to recommend whether the tax burden should be shifted between residential and commercial properties, or whether there should be any exemptions, such as a residential exemption or a small commercial exemption. And because Dover is primarily residential, we feel, the board feels, that we should have a single tax rate, which is called a factor of 1, so that everybody is taxed the same way, and there should be no exemptions.
Did you see the Boston Globe West today?
Yeah, very timely.
You know how on page 2 they always have a chart of some ridiculously, well, this time, it was perfect timing, was the percentage of tax revenue from a commercial. You know, Dover was, if not the lowest, the second lowest. I was just...
I did read that. The time was unbelievable. Okay. Now, was I supposed to open a public hearing for this? No?
Essentially, you have.
You have.
Yes, essentially,
Yeah.
thank you. I was reading last year's minutes. Rob, do you have any questions?
I do know.
Carol, do you have any questions?
Nope, it's served us well over the decades and decades.
Okay. My one question is, the tax rate being certified by the Commonwealth, when can, do you have a time frame in mind?
Hopefully by December 11th.
Oh, good. I believe last year was December 8th. if I remember
Well, someplace in
Early.
early December.
Yeah.
We have to submit all the information, and our values haven't been approved yet. So when you take the vote on the classification, you will have to take a contingent on the approval of the values. But we're meeting on December 4th again, so hopefully we'll finalize everything and submit it to the DOR at that point. And then I'm saying it should be a week, it probably will be less, but you know, you never know for sure.
Yeah. Good. Thank you very much for that. Okay.
Have you seen any general trends relative to valuations? Like,
There's not really too much. The sort of the mid-range seems to be selling pretty well. I would say anything from 600,000 to 1 million, give or take a little bit. The higher end and the lower end seem to be selling less quickly, so to speak.
You know, my impression driving around town is there's a lot of new development and a lot of new construction too, which is obviously good for the revenue side, and some people obviously argue against that, but I see a lot of activity out there, so that's good, including the
And
two
a
new
lot of-
subdivisions, and, you know,
The
as they.
value of the really big houses is down.
Okay. Well, with that being said, I believe I'll make the motion to set the factor of 1 single tax classification for the fiscal year 2014?
Yes.
2014. Contingent upon the certification by the Commonwealth as to the tax rate. Do I have any questions?
With no exemptions.
With no exceptions, thank you. Thank you for that.
second?
All in favor? Aye. Well, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Folks, happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good point, Dave. Okay. You know, it's funny, for such an important number, for most of the residents in the town, it's a matter of 2 minutes and it's so anticlimactic, you know? I digress. Let's
Well,
move
it's
forward.
not a good sign that the high-end homes are not, are devalued.
Well, you look at the median home is what, some $1 million, give or take?
Yeah.
And I imagine the high end that speaking of is somewhat in excess of that.
Well, it just increases the burden.
You know, which is true.
On a higher more houses.
Okay, let's move on to a propane tank installation hearing, and I'm going, well, can I open this open hearing before 7:45? No, okay. So that being said, I guess, you know what, I can jump ahead to appointments,
Absolutely.
if you don't mind. And I believe I have the only 2 appointments this evening, so bear with me one second while I pull out the information. Good. The first appointment I would like to make is for the Council on Aging. And I would like to nominate Camille Johnston of 34 Main Street to become a director on the Council on Aging.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. So Camille on the Council on Aging. Thank you, Camille, for stepping forward. I know she's been attending the last few meetings that I've attended, so she's jumping in feet first. And the second is the Open Space Committee. And Mark Bush would like to be appointed to that particular committee. Anybody have any questions?
Do you need a second?
Yes, we need a second on Mark Bush. All in favor?
Aye.
Good, thank you, Mr. Bush, for that. And Justine, I'm sure you're watching. I took care of Justine. Okay, is the Board of Fire Engineers ready, Graham? All right,
They are out there, yes.
Mr. Chairman?
please, would you, Dave?
We'd like to see the fire engineer.
Good evening. Big brain thruster here, wow.
Good evening.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you for coming in. Just so you know, at 6:45, I have to open a public hearing for a installation of a propane tank on Farm Street. But I will not interrupt, or I'll continue that, and it'll happen during the...
Just open it and continue it until after this.
Good, thank you. That being said, on our agenda this evening, which was originally posted at 6:55, the Fire Chief Jay Hughes and the Board of Fire Engineers are going to come in to speak of the existing garage doors and how they pertain to the new fire truck. And who's going to speak this evening? Chief? Please. Please, Chief, welcome. Thank you very much for coming in.
Jim, thanks for having me. Jay Ramsey invited me, and John Sugden is chairman of the board.
John, thank you.
Engineers.
Thank you, Sid Craig, thank you.
And, the issue, I think, the background is that there's been discussion subsequent to the delivery of the ladder truck, and I guess there's 3 questions that need to be answered from the perspective of this board. And I should bring this board up to date, in addition to what Mr. Ramsey is probably brought you up to date on, where we stand. And it's relative to the new ladder truck, the 109-foot ladder truck that we had delivered late spring. And the ladder truck was delivered to the specifications that myself, the deputy, and the 2 representatives from the company asked for. They delivered us a truck that fit into the station with the proper height requirement, and all those assurances I gave to most every board that I spoke to. Subsequent to that, the truck has left the station 177 times as I sit here tonight since it's been delivered without incident. The question now comes up, and it's new information brought to my attention, and that is that, well, Chief, outside of having a full-time department that's going to keep the bay in front of that open from any snow or snow drifts, windrows, that truck, absent of that, may not be able to come over that incline sufficiently to not hit the top part of the ladder. And in the meantime, we've had an architect look at what it might take to not deal with that. No, we can't put somebody there 24/7, either from the fire department or the public works department. The specifications were drawn according to what we needed for the truck, that we needed for the town of Dover and its people. And I don't have any second thoughts about that. If we had a full-time department, the truck would continue to go pretty much as it is all the time right now, in and out. But if it's prudent that there's any concern that's brought to my attention, whether I missed it or didn't miss it, I made the decision on the truck, and I'll stand with that decision. Not the Board of Fire Engineers, not the Superintendent of the Streets, not the Deputy Chief or anybody else. The truck has gone in there and without incident, has had no problems since May. In order to ensure, now that it's been brought to the attention of this board and my Board of Fire Engineers, it was prudent, Mr. Ramsey's assertions, help, assistance, that we go down the road to look at alternatives that might mitigate a snow road being out there in front of that. Now, I should say that the ambulance cannot move out of that fire station at all if we have a wind drift that's more than 7 or 8 inches high. We cannot move the ambulance. It can't, because not of its height, because of its low bed, it sits close to the ground. So that is continually being watched and monitored to have the snow removed from that. It's also sufficient to say that in a major storm, that there are at least four personnel that sit in that station during the duration of the storm. But I'm not going to have and be concerned about the one time that human error occurs. Even though there's costs involved here, I can't shirk my responsibility to deliver a truck that the town needed, has to have, and at the same time, if there's no guarantee about snow removal in front of that, and there has to be concern for the personnel that are driving the vehicle, if in fact they're concerned that they might take that vehicle out the door and there may be enough snow that it's going to lift it just enough. And we're not going to take a $850,000 vehicle and compromise that. Once this information is made known, then I think we go down this path of rectifying a situation. A new building today would have 14-foot high doors. Our present building only has 12-foot high doors. That's the way it was built in 1975 and designed. It served us well for a long, long time. With a new addition that was put on with the engine 2, the 4,000-gallon tanker, we've got enough clearance there. That was an issue at that particular time, that those doors were a little bit higher because they were later in the progress of the architectural design to make sure that was accommodated. I can't change what's there. I can say where we've been to at this particular point. The what-ifs I've been confronted with, the people that drive the truck, that's my responsibility to run that department. The alternatives I believe the board has in front of them as to what Don Mills from Mills Whitaker Architects has come up with. And he gives a couple alternatives, but his first alternative, I don't want to speak to that. The board has his proposal in front of them, and he proposes to move it from 12 feet by taking the doors, bays 1 and 2, on the Center Street side of the building, and doing construction work that gives you a clearance of 12 feet 8, which is what we have now, gives us slightly over 12 inches of clearance, which is more than adequate that has any variable as it relates to that truck. Engine 1, which also sits next door to this, in my budget is would be set for refurbishment over the next 12 to 18 months. And depending on refurbishment there, who knows what the height of that vehicle may come in at, depending on an enclosed cab. From what I understand from the architect, symmetrical, to make it look proper. He's suggesting both bays be lifted up to the 12'8" height.
Jay, may I interrupt 1 second?
Yes.
Am I to open a public hearing? It's 6:45, and I am to open a public hearing for the purpose of a propane tank installation at 3638 Farm Street. Now, logistically,
Make a motion to continue the hearing till after this session with the fire chief and board of fire engineers would be appropriate.
thank you.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Jay. Continue.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. So with that, he's given a cost impact, a projected budget for the above work. He has a certain percentage for overruns, contingencies, and so forth. And I think that's up to the board. This was not provided to me. This was provided to Mr. Ramsey and the board to discuss that aspect of it. I'm happy to go through it. I've read it in detail. But I'm happy and more interested in answering any questions the board, the citizens that might have, and look at the responsibility for getting this executed, and that's where we are as of November 21st.
Good. Well, thank you, Jay. Thank you for your statements in somewhat trying to take all the responsibility on yourself for the decision. I don't know if that's totally appropriate, because there are a lot of people in the decision-making process. Thank you for your honesty there. And before we get into some questions, I just want to say that I think we're in agreement that we just want to protect the assets in town. We should fix it, whether it should have been fixed last year, or fixed this year, or next year, next fiscal year. It has to happen. But I think we're all in the agreement on that particular matter. Protecting your firefighters driving the actual vehicle, or someone standing by if it hits, God forbid, debris and so forth, so on. But I think we're all on the same page before the questions are asked, that this should be fixed sooner than later. Now, to that, I will open the floor to questions. Robin, Carol, no?
I have had the benefit of having some conversations, so just to make sure that I understand, so is it the suspension on the truck that raises and lowers it? You know, because we do have some kind of clearance, so I'm just kind of interested in so if you have snow outside the door, and these are really inane questions, but it just helps me understand. So then the truck's gonna go up over that
Right.
potential mound of snow? And is it the suspension that may force it up higher than the clearance that we have, or?
It's a very fair question, Robin. I'll try to address it as best I can. And basically, it's the weight of that truck, probably for an inch or two of snow, is going to keep that truck right close to the pavement.
Right.
It can freeze up, we can't take that chance. But it's this windrow that when the plows plow in front of the fire station, you know, it can be a foot and a half high until such time as they do the cleanup. And you can have a fire call in that time because you've got people wearing two hats. They're running a snowplow, they may be a fire person too, they may be a driver. So it really amounts to the fact that the physical vehicle itself, since it sits in the station now, and as I say, 177 times backed in and out without incident whatsoever, the trucks don't fly out the doors. They come out fairly gently, if you will, no matter what side of the vehicle, the station it's coming out or what bay it's coming out of. But just the sheer height of that, it's going to now take the front axle of that vehicle, and the snow, if you had 12 inches, maybe you compacted 6, but it's too close, if the snow is not removed, to worry about, put any driver in jeopardy, let alone the building in jeopardy, let alone the vehicle in jeopardy, to guarantee that snow is going to be gone. And to that extent, I can't now in good conscience not consider this remedy. So that, the truck was built to our specs. The vendor did everything he was supposed to do. We got the truck we wanted, and it does fit in the station without incident. When it comes to snowfall being in front of the bay, I can't jeopardize or take an opportunity, the chance that that may not always be clear.
You know, having served on the capital budget before this, I know we had numerous conversations about, you know, making sure the truck could fit into the bay that we do have. So, you know, when I first heard of the issues, I said, I know he asked that question, and I'm sure, you know, people in the town might be asking that question as well. So I appreciate your explanation, because, you know, I could see how potential, you know, this, you're focused on the truck, you're focused on purchasing a truck that's gonna fit into the bay you have, and, you know, we're all human, so, you know, unfortunately.
I hope I made that abundantly clear, Robert,
Right,
too,
so-
that I had no intentions, and I'll take
Right,
it.
you can't always predict everything, no matter how much due diligence.
Well,
You
the
do.
questions were asked, and that's why I'm not backing off from what I said. I answered irrevocably,
Oh,
that the truck's fitting in the station, and now it's brought to my attention that the snow, if the snow rows are still there, the truck is not gonna survive getting out there unless the snow is removed. Right, as the fire chief, I'm thinking of a fire truck and the bay and it's fitted, and, you know, neither did the vendor. We all felt very comfortable with it, so I'm not equivocating from what I said. I appreciate your comments, and frankly, I'm going to go a step further. To any embarrassment or any person that feels hurt by this, it's the way of life working in this town. Everybody works together, we try to do the best we can. I think we've accomplished a terrific truck here, so I would bear the indulgence of all parties involved.
You know, and I concur with what Jim said, you know, we purchase assets, and we want to make sure that we maintain those
Correct.
assets, and the safety of the personnel as well.
That's utmost in my mind, it has been in my tenure. This time.
Just to share the thoughts and sentiments from the Board of Fire Engineers, we are the stewards of the assets that this town has given to this fire department to serve this community. I think it's the best piece of apparatus to do the job that it's intended to do. And I look at this as being prudent, but also, in a certain way, I look at this as bringing our building up to code, so to speak. The apparatus that's built today is a lot bigger than it was years ago in '75 when the building was first erected. It's borderline, and I'm not sure I want to be the one to gamble on putting that vehicle out of service when we might need it, or having an enormous expense trying to remedy whatever that damage might be.
I think we're all in agreement, John. I think the questions that I've been asked is, why wasn't it built into the budget last year? And if I'm hearing correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, perhaps it was overlooked. The height was overlooked.
I don't know how more clearly to state that, Jim.
Okay, I just, you know.
The stenographer said very clearly.
Okay.
I was thinking about a fire truck that has an axle sufficient GVW weight to take a 109-foot ladder and pedestal on that, and that's what we got. To think about snow, as the architect quoted, he said if you had a full-time department, they could be sweeping it all the time. We don't have a full-time department, and we've always made we get the snow out of the way, no doubt about that. But no, we want to use the word overlooked?
Yeah, well, no, good. The other thing I will applaud, though, is being proactive in here, and I think, Craig, you first come up with this issue, and I do applaud that. We definitely want to be proactive in this particular matter, and that's the positive out of this. The negative is it's going to cost the town some 80 grand, or whatever the number is, final number is.
75,000 is
Yeah.
what I saw with the contingency.
Right, with the contingency below.
Yeah.
Carol?
So, no, I totally agree with everything that's been said. do you think that we'll be able to, so we are gonna have to go through a winter though? Okay, without this, so,
Carol, with the bid process of probably 6 weeks and so forth, you raise the next further question.
so, you know, either we do this as a, if we think if it's that risky, because we don't know what kind of winter we're going to have, we do one of two things. Either we change the operations of the facility so that there will never be snow out there,
Correct,
right?
that's correct. Right.
For one winter.
For one winter, okay? Or we move it up
Via reserve
via the
fund.
reserve fund.
That's interesting. Can you speak to that, Jay? As far as, you've had 177 times the truck has left the station and come back. Are we rolling the dice on this particular winter, not knowing snow accumulation, not knowing? And first of all, it would be human error with the non-snow removal that might cause the issue anyway. So are we rolling the dice by adding up human error with not knowing the snowfall accumulation over the next 6 months?
Given the choice, if I was to help make that decision, I would say the scope of work, from what I understood from the architect, is such that once they have the go-ahead, this is work that could continue during the wintertime, and that could be done expeditiously. It's not like weather's going to impact us. I'm not willing to gamble. I'd rather see it done sooner than later, and I'm speaking for probably the 15 people that drive that truck. I need a certain comfort level for them, and knowing the issue that it is, and Craig was cognizant of that, indeed, as you mentioned, Jim, but I think I personally would rather see it done sooner than later, rather than take that through the winter.
Say it takes a month to do this job, I don't know, I'm just saying that. Where does the fire truck, where's it housed? Right outside in the parking lot at that point for a month?
No, depending on how he decides to do the bays, we haven't got quite that far, whether you do one and then two, both at the same time.
Okay.
There's either one or two places. Either we could house it, we wouldn't want to keep it outside.
No, I agree with
Had
that.
to be sure. And I think, Craig, why don't you jump in, and we've spoken about that.
Right. I think actually it's a good timing, because the squad the money that was appropriated to fix the squad truck last year is scheduled to go in the next few weeks. We're working on the specs and looking. So that will be at a vendor being worked on. We'd have an open bay. We could move a few vehicles around. So that bay that's being worked on would be open throughout the whole process of the building project, because we'd be minus one truck. It'd be over in Hopkinton being worked on for roughly 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah. Okay, good, you've given some thought to that. Good,
Right.
because I wouldn't want to see it outside either.
And that's the brush truck, and then you have the other small brush truck, which could be kept, if we needed to off-site, because it's a brush truck, primarily in the dry season. That's if we have snow.
Yeah.
I will have snow. It's just a matter of how much.
No, Carol, that's a good point. Do you have any other questions?
I have a question for John. Do we know where we are so far relative to, I know it's early in the fiscal year, but the reserve fund?
In terms of the reserve fund, well, we're in good shape. You know, we have not made many demands on it
Okay.
as of yet, but as you say, it's early in the season, and at the same time, that's kind of why we have a reserve fund for an expected emergency, soil tanks.
And we increased it a couple of years ago to 250, right?
Yes, we're
So,
at 250.
and we haven't come close to it?
No, we have, but.
During
Last
the
year?
Carroll Community
Carroll
Center.
Community
Oh,
Center.
right,
That
we
issue
got, yeah,
was
right, that's right.
those
Yeah,
things.
yeah, but that's what it's for.
So from a warrant committee perspective, this would be something you would be comfortable thinking about, using reserve funds for?
I'll parrot back your words. be comfortable thinking about it.
Right, and that's
I'm
why-
one of 9.
Right, and
you
that's
know,
why,
you know,
and that's why I didn't
Yes, I
put you
mean,
in
no,
the
that's
position to make
exactly
a
what, you know,
decision.
the reserve fund is for, and then
Okay.
yes, of course they'd be comfortable. I mean, and one of the issues, whether it's shutting down the whole building when we have the oil tank issue, or, you know, possible assets that are potentially in, assets in people who are, you know, maybe a safety issue, and then fixing a ladder truck in a building that if we do have an issue is going to be a lot more than 75 grand. So, you know, it starts with the fire department and board of engineers and the board of selectmen, and if it comes in front of the warrant committee, we'll get, you know, serious attention, of course.
Who would issue the reserve fund transfer? We would?
The request would come from the board,
That's what I thought. Thank you.
because it's your building.
Right. Okay. I do not have any further questions. Carol?
No, I don't either. I would just say again that if the risk is there, then the risk should be handled now.
Okay.
I agree with that, and
It was
I
an
thank you
excellent
for
point, yeah,
raising
yeah.
that point, because I didn't think about the.
I hadn't thought about it until we were getting into the discussion, going, wait a minute, we've got a winter coming up.
Right, we're almost, it's almost upon us.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I don't know if you want to make any final comments for the issue is over, but floor is yours if you'd like to.
My final comment would be, I appreciate the input from all parties involved, and particularly, I would like to take note of Mr. Ramsey and Mr. Bugatti. Their help has been beneficial. Craig Hughes' help has been very beneficial, and the Board of Fire Engineers, and former Deputy Chief Dave Tavera. So all of these together, we all work together here. The buck does stop at somebody. I appreciate you listening to my comments. I've always wanted to do what's best for that department this last 22 years as chief, and I continue to do that for the safety of the personnel. I appreciate the time and the understanding, and we're going to cooperate on a timely basis with whomever we have to, Mr. Chairman.
Good, thank you. Again, thank you very much for coming in. Yes,
Mr. Chairman, I don't normally do this, but in light of Mrs. Lisbon's comments, perhaps it would be appropriate for the Board of Selectmen to consider authorizing me to make the request for the reserve fund transfer now. There's plenty of time for it to go nowhere or to go somewhere, but in the interest of time.
I'm glad you spoke up because I didn't know the logistics of how that would work.
I was going to ask.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So if you would like, you could entertain a motion to approve a reserve fund transfer request in the
I
amount.
will entertain that motion then.
So I would like to make a motion to, is it a prior notice to put in place?
This would
No,
actually be a
this would be
reserve fund
reserve fund,
transfer.
yeah.
Okay, so to put in a reserve fund transfer for $75,000.
Well, let's have a number not to exceed,
Okay, a number not to exceed.
which,
I would go with
Okay.
92,000.
Okay.
yeah, the whole thing.
All right,
And then we'll
90
decide on
okay,
the alternatives.
92,000 for the reconfiguration of the bay doors at the fire's house.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Now logistically, what will happen now?
We'll
Now that
prepare a
we've
res-
decided something should happen,
We'll prepare the reserve fund transfer request and get it to the warrant committee.
okay.
For them
And
to
at the
start
same
talking
time,
about.
the Board of Fire Engineers and Chief Hughes will talk about the alternatives and what's best over there.
Yep.
With whom, with Carl or with whom, thank you. Good, we have a game plan now.
I have
Yes.
another question. Do we need to begin a bid process for the work, or?
Well, we really can't
You have
do
to
that.
appropriate it first.
Okay.
We need to
Okay.
get at least an indication from the warrant committee that they're willing to support it.
Yeah.
Because all of the bid package preparation is part of this project cost.
John, when's your next warrant committee meeting? December 11, maybe?
December 11th is the next scheduled meeting, you know, and if we need to, we can get the committee together before that, I think, you
Okay, I'll follow up with you tomorrow on timing.
know. Okay.
Okay, thank you, John. Gentlemen, again, thank you very much for coming in. We'll get this situation corrected.
Have a nice Thanksgiving, gentlemen. Good to see you.
Yes, yes, happy
Thanks, Chief.
Thanksgiving, yes.
Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Now, we're coming back to that now.
Oh, you could have, I wanted to thank you for waiting. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Chief. Dave, do I reopen the open hearing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'll make the motion to reopen the open hearing regarding the propane tank installation at 36-38 Farm Street.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Now, who do we have speaking to this evening?
Speak very briefly. Mr. Chairman, my name is Ken Soderholm. I'm the owner of record, the trustee for the land trust for the property. I'm also the builder up there who's doing the project. We have Mike Watson from Medway Oil who's going to be installing our propane tanks, and Deputy Chief Tiberi who's we've been working with on the permitting, and my son and partner Sam Soderholm right here.
Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for coming in.
I'd rather turn it over to the experts unless you have specific questions for myself.
Nope, we can turn it over.
I guess I'll start. By law, anything over 2,000 gallons, they have to get a license for the property. They're gonna have 6,000 gallons. That's why we're here. We've reviewed all the plans, all the work. I've gone over it with the fire chief. They're gonna be underground. There'll be 6 1,000-gallon underground propane tanks. They'll all be, and Mike, jump in here if I miss, they'll all be tied together for piping. They'll have one central pipe that'll come out to a distribution center, and at that point, there'll be different various, some will go to a caretaker's house on the property, which that piping is already in. Some will go to the main house, the pool, the generator. That's why the large quantity, so that they can be self-sufficient for about a week. There will be a safety valve on each tank, so that if that line should be broken, which would be a large volume of product coming out, it will close down. So we have no chance of a lot of, 6,000 gallons of propane dissipating in the air. The propane is heavy, it would sit on the ground. They're underground, they'll all be tied down, there'll be a concrete pad, so that the propane is light. If you put it in a tank underground, or a propane tank above ground, it'll float down the river. So we're requiring that it be on a concrete pad, all the tanks will be tied down, so there's no chance of them popping out of the ground, breaking the line. Fire hazard, because they're under the ground, you wouldn't have to worry about brush fires or anything encroaching onto the tanks and heating them up, causing a vapor leak. It's about as safe as we can go.
What's the depth of a tank like this?
Tank, from the top of the tank to the top of the dome, I think is about 2.5 feet, Mike. And
30 inches.
Yeah,
30
30
inches.
inches will be the top of the tank.
Thanks.
They're backfilled with concrete sand. And I say concrete sand because concrete sand is masonry sand like they use for bricks behind you. There's no stones in it, and the stones or pebbles is what will damage your tank. So they use wash sand all around the tank, 6 to 8 inches of sand all around the tank. The tanks usually have feet on them, so that they're not touching anything on the ground, the sand will run underneath. As you will see, the license in front of you says LP gas for residential use on this property only. We put that in there because the license runs with the land, so that if this could happen, Mr. Soderholm said, "No, we don't want to have a house here anymore. We want to have a propane filling station."
Okay.
They've already they're halfway there with the license. They have to get a permit. If you grant this license, they still have to get a permit from the fire department to do the work. So there's two processes here.
To that point, this application is for a lifetime, so to speak, and your permit is annual?
The permit will run as long as the permit runs. The
Okay.
permit will run as long as the license runs. We don't renew them every year. If that's what you want, we could. We could say, hey, a permit will last 2 years.
Let me ask a question to the legality of the license and the permit. Say he wants to turn it into a propane filling station, and there's nothing on record. Okay, so something, red flag would pop up somewhere.
If he wanted to, then he's got to get a permit, and he can't, because your license says it's for residential use only. You've limited the license to residential use only for that specific
Address, right. The
Pardon?
license runs with the land.
The license is no different than the Meadows, you're down here on Springdale Ave. They have, I think, 6 1,000-gallon tanks. And it was like, I have to look at the license, but it's for residential use, so that somebody couldn't come in and say, hey, I'll take out all the houses and do something else. The license is specific for that specific use. That has to be for the use, not just there, and we've done that. We'll do that with the permit too.
Okay.
Is this to be used for heating the house and the properties, or is this just to support a generator in case of?
Heat, go ahead, and I'll kind
Sorry,
of...
it's for
Okay,
heating the house. I mean, obviously, we wish natural gas was available
right.
on the street, but it's not. So we looked at all the alternatives, of oil versus propane. This was a decision the mechanical engineers made. Mike convinced us it was a good route to go, and the owners are comfortable with it.
For heat the house, heat the carriage house, heat the pool, run the generator, and any other domestic use that they would have.
Okay.
Stove.
Stoves,
Sure.
they could have
Yeah.
a jacuzzi,
Yeah.
anything. And my understanding is,
Probably a couple of, there's a couple of gas fireplaces in the house.
and you need the volume with propane. Mike, jump in here this year better. You need, if you don't, you need the high volume, because once the tank goes down, you need that pressure behind it to move the propane. Even if you have a small tank for your stove, the tank is only a quarter full. It won't work. You don't have the volume behind it. So that's one reason for the larger quantity. And they want to be able to be self-sufficient.
Last year, after I forget it was the hurricane or the winter storm, 2 trees came down the driveway, took the power lines down, actually took the whole pole down, transformer down. So it got quite complicated with the transformer. The Clean Harbors had to be out there, and the owners at that time, I ran on the generator for something like 10 days. And so we're going to be bringing most of our electrical underground from Farm Street as part of this project, but there's still a concern of something happening like that.
Okay. You've answered all my questions, thank you. Gentlemen, you should be happy Mr. Tiberi's with you. He has a great history with the town, and
It was a very simple explanation as well, which I really appreciate.
thank you. Okay, so I will make the motion to approve the application for a new license for the 6 1,000-gallon LG gas for residential use only at 36-38 Farm Street.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Every year you have to renew the license for the town clerk.
Okay.
At that point, I'll close the open hearing on this particular matter.
Do you have a picture there? Do I see a poster board there?
I didn't know if you had an interest. This is what the house will look like.
Really?
Oh,
And you only need
hence the 6,000 gallons. Yeah.
It's a very nice house, stone, veneer on the bottom, shingle.
Beautiful.
It's a wonderful property.
Great.
Good, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, we've, as we scooch along here, I know we've jumped around the agenda. So we've taken care of the tax classification, the propane tank installation, the Board of Fire Engineers, and appointments. So the next item on the agenda is to review the Selectmen's fiscal 2015 operating budgets. With a note that we just received them this evening. And Dave and Grant, thank you very much. I know there's been a lot of work done recently, and you haven't had the opportunity to fully vet, including your narrative. So we'll just thank you for giving this evening, and we'll continue this in the next bunch of meetings. Right.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
so being new on the committee,
Yes.
at our next meeting, will we be reviewing these in details? So to that, so if I have any questions, I should save those for the meeting?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Dave does a great narrative.
okay, so I may not have any
When are
questions.
they due to the warrant committee?
December,
December 13th or 14th?
13th.
So we have,
So you have
how
two
many
more
meetings?
meetings.
We have
You
two
have
more
two more.
meetings?
Okay. Good.
I was just gonna look at the dates of our next meeting.
So when is our next meeting, Greer? Do you know off the top of your head?
December 5th,
December 5th, thank you.
yes, yeah, you have
Okay, so we'll take up
a
this.
couple of meetings before.
Okay, good.
Are they allowed that? Because that's my birthday.
Ooh, is it? We actually have a meeting on my birthday also, I noted, this year. Isn't that unbelievable?
So are we
Rather
getting
than try
cakes? Are we getting
We can
cakes?
arrange that for next July.
So my husband will be most appreciative because there won't be any
Yeah, expensive dinners, yeah.
demands on him.
Okay, and thank you for that hard work on the fiscal 2015 operating budgets, and we look forward to jumping into those. Next agenda item at 7:15 is the set the opening and closing dates for the 2014 annual town meeting warrant. And Greer or Dave?
Yes,
Greer, thank you.
per your fiscal year 14 calendar, the annual town meeting warrant will open this evening, November 21st, and close on Friday, January 17th. So any town boards and committees, town departments, citizens petitions should be submitted to the Selectmen's office between now and January 17th.
So we'll get that onto the website as well.
Yes, we will, front page.
Because for some reason, it always comes as a surprise to certain committees. So,
It does. Yeah, it's quick.
I know.
Okay, January 17th.
So it's probably a good thing for us to remind the committees that we're really going to.
Yes.
Yeah, we will send out a memo
Okay.
informing all of the departments and their.
Oh, I'm sure you will, but
So,
yeah, you do every year.
Yeah,
but-
we do, yeah. We'll get that right out.
Okay, I will make the motion to set the opening and closing dates for the 2014 annual town meeting warrant. Opening on this evening, November 21st, 2013, and closing on January 17th, 2014.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Other business, the next agenda item, we have 4 prior notices, all in building maintenance. Dave, can you speak to these? Please.
The first fire notice in your packet, Mr. Chairman, involves a sum of $1,920 for the purpose of upgrading the library elevator to be compliant with current code for elevators of that age.
So is this a result of an inspection?
Yes.
Okay.
Are the other elevators in the various buildings okay?
So far, so good, yes.
They've been inspected?
They're on their inspection schedules, and we haven't identified a problem yet.
Okay.
You know, elevator law is funny, and what particular year does this bring it up to?
It brings up to current,
Current?
but
Yeah.
this regulation captures elevators as of a certain date and older. This happens to be of that date or older. I think it was 74 or 75. The changes are always peculiar in terms of their applicability.
Right.
They don't capture everything. Newer elevators without it are still okay because they're newer, but older ones get nailed.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll acknowledge the prior notice. Okay. Any questions on that, Carol?
Nope.
Okay. Next prior notice?
The next one is for $3,554, and that is the result of replacing a hot water heater at the Protective Agency's building that let go.
Would that be a standard, like 60-gallon hot water heater?
I don't know the answer, Mr. Chairman.
Hope not for 3,000.
Well, that's what I saw the number, and I think about my own home, and 60 or a gallon, or whatever it is.
This was different. This was not your normal residential hot water
Right.
boiler, but I don't recall the details on that.
Was there any other damage? I know when my hot water heater went, I
Water
had the
It got messy.
opportunity to,
Yeah.
It was messy, but
yeah,
no other.
the floor didn't get damaged or,
Okay.
Same applied to when my washing machine just
exactly.
when I
Okay, on to the next prior notice.
The next one, Mr. Chairman, is for $1,400, and that is to pay the clothing allowance for the highway union employees, in this case, building maintenance employees. As you recall, it used to be an expense item,
Yeah.
and after the IRS visit last year, it was determined that it really should be a salary item and therefore taxed. So we didn't have any money in the salary budget for this, so this is to put the money in the salary budget to pay it.
Why wouldn't you go straight to a reserve fund transfer on this one?
Because we have an overtime line, if we don't spend
Okay.
all of that, we might be able to absorb it.
So this covers, how many people?
Two.
Two, okay.
Is the number tax affected?
Is the number tax
Mike,
effective?
you mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's good.
It-
It
yeah.
should be.
Gross stuff.
Is this gross stuff for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I know the warrant committee's been speaking of this issue, and I know you approved reserve fund transfers for,
We've seen two prior notices.
Prior notices, no reserve
We
fund.
haven't done a reserve fund transfer related to the same exact issue,
Good.
on the clothing.
thank you, John. And the last prior notice, Dave?
In the amount of $3,995, and that was to repair the chairlift, which you see coming up the stairs here, which has a big ugly emergency, don't touch this wheelchair lift, or under pains and penalties of death,
Yeah.
because until it's inspected again, we have to leave that notice up, but it has been repaired. And that's to make the building entirely handicapped accessible from both directions.
So the repairs were $39.95. Now, what if the inspector comes in and says, no, you didn't do this correct, you need something else, boom, boom, boom? Are you gonna come in with another prior notice, or you just update this for reserve fund transfer if that's the case?
Either one. My hope is that the people who did this work knew what they were doing, and we did in fact test it, and it works. So
Yeah.
I hope that doesn't happen, Mr. Chairman, but I can't say it won't.
Okay. And they're all building maintenance, so how's that account doing at this moment?
Right now, we're in good shape. You know, it's all relative. 2 years ago, the underground tank that let go across the street, we were in bad shape for 2 years. Right now, knock on wood, we're
So
in good
the,
shape.
the repair or the upgrade to the fire station, would that come out of the building maintenance account?
No, it
It's too
would
big.
probably go in, the reserve fund transfer would go into the building maintenance budget.
Okay, all right, so it would come out.
Go against the budget.
Would go into the reserve fund transfer.
Right, right,
would
go into the
and
budget.
charge
Yeah,
from
right.
it.
But because it's so
Versus-
large, we would have to make a reserve fund.
Oh, yeah, we
Well,
would.
versus a capital budget item for 15 also.
Right.
If it went that road, right? Okay, good. Okay,
So could we get a motion to approve and sign the prior notices?
okay. I thought we just acknowledged them.
You actually signed them for us. to
I move
indicate-
we approve the 4 prior notices.
Thank you. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
My warrant committee days where we just acknowledge prior notice.
That's right.
Right, I was thinking the same thing.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, as we move along, we are, on the next agenda item is to approve the October 8th and October 24th and November 6th meeting minutes of the Board of Selectmen. So please bear with us while we go through these. First one we'll look at is October 8th, which was the meeting where we had the Rail Trail Committee Chair Kate Caney come in. And also the Dover Greenway group came in.
Bless you.
God bless you. Do you want to make a motion? Have you finished with the 8th?
Oh, on the 8th, yes. I move we approve the minutes of October 8th as submitted.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll go on to the October 24th.
And Greer, the Long-Range Planning Committee had requested a certified copy of these minutes.
We will get those to you.
Thank you.
Okay, the October 24th meeting, Park and Recreation Commission came in and spoke about the revolving fund, thank you, yes, which is very true, thank you.
Just thought it was important to clarify.
We also made a statement about the Attorney General's decision on this past May's town meeting, Articles 11, 12, and 18. Okay, good. Cal, you're also October 24th.
I move that the minutes of October 24th be approved as submitted.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, thank you. And the last but not least, November 6th.
These were the easiest to review.
Yes, it was a very quick meeting. We renewed the package store in the American Legion liquor license. Okay. Good. I'll make the motion to accept the November 6th, 2013 meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just acknowledge the Herculean efforts of Greer and Felicia in our office in making these possible tonight.
Well, that's an excellent point, because they're very difficult minutes, and especially the first two that we voted on this evening. So, Greer, thank you very much, and
Appreciate
please,
it.
I'll pass that along to Felicia.
yes, thank you very much. As we move along, my favorite agenda item, citizens' comments, and I will have one, but I will open the floor to anyone else prior to that.
The floor is yours.
If none, I would like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and safe travels for all those who dare travel prior to and on that day. With that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I would first also like to say Happy Hanukkah to everybody.
Oh, thank you, Carol.
And should we combine the wishes to Happy Thanksgiving?
Thanks, And I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much and good night.